Thank you. Welcome to everybody who is here. We have today, Daryl Seitchik is going to be presenting, and Daryl is a cartoonist and teacher currently living in Vermont. She's taught virtual and in-person comics workshops for children, teens, and adults at schools, libraries, and museums all throughout New England. And I know she has something cool happening tomorrow at the Nonfiction Comic Festival in Burlington that she will talk about. So thank you so much for being here to talk to us, and also I know this is going to be a participatory workshop. So Daryl, thank you very much, and you can have the time, and you can also take a second to let folks know what they might like, any supplies they might need for the participatory part of it.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So yes, this is going to be a workshop. I'm going to do a little bit of talking too, but we are going to be doing some writing and drawing. So if you can get out like a stack of just plain old copy paper or a sketchbook or a notebook and a pencil or pen, that would be great. And I can give you guys a second to do that because we are going to start drawing pretty much right away. All right. So I'm just going to get started then. Okay, welcome everyone. So this class is called Comics for a Cause, or Nonfiction Comics, and I'm going to be walking you through different approaches to making comics about the world and how you can use comics to engage with the world, and also by extension how you can work with teens and tweens and older kids in general to use this medium to find their voice and engage with issues that they care about. So first, a little bit about me. This is me as a cartoon character. And I've been drawing for most of my life, and I've been calling myself a cartoonist for about 13 years. I'm also a teacher. So the youngest person I've taught is 4, and the oldest person is 94. So it's a pretty wide range, but I do love teaching kids and teens specifically, and especially comics. I'm also a mushroom enthusiast. I like to go mushroom hunting, walking around in the woods. It's one of my favorite things to do during the season. And I am an amateur musician that started at the beginning of COVID, where I learned how to play guitar, and now I actually have a band and play for friends sometimes. And I'm a publisher. So I co-run Parsifal Press with my partner, and we publish comics and zines by artists that we love, and we'll be actually tabling and selling our comics tomorrow at the Nonfiction Comics Festival in Burlington, and it's a free event. I'll tell you more about it at the end of this talk. But before we do any of that, I would like us to all start drawing, just to get our juices going. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I would like you to draw yourself as a cartoon character, and it doesn't have to be good and it doesn't have to be super detailed. I could basically draw myself as a Peanuts character. As you can see, I have a C for a nose and a pretty simple face. The most complicated thing is my hair. So first thing is draw yourself as a cartoon character, just your head if you want, and then have 3 thought bubbles emanating from your head. And in each thought bubble, I would like you to think or draw or write if you want, but I encourage you to draw 3 things that are pretty consistently on your mind. For me, it's mushrooms, my cats, and also the way our brains work, and specifically like how our brains develop throughout childhood and how we continue to grow and evolve as we like psychologically as we get older. So 3 very different things for me, but they're the things I tend to think about the most, besides the news, which, so these can be really simple drawings. They can be basically emojis if you would like. we're just brainstorming through drawing right now. You can even do stick figures. Anyone have any questions? And you can also feel free to share what you're writing down or drawing in the chat if you'd like to. We'll have some time, hopefully, to share these as well. Whenever I teach a comics class, I usually start with a warm-up activity like this so that we're getting drawing right away. And it's not just me talking before people start getting to work. So if you're interested in teaching a comics workshop to teens, I recommend starting with a quick drawing activity like this. So we'll do this until really for the next 5-10 minutes. We'll see how it goes. If people finish, you can put the thumbs up emoji on your screen so we know. Doesn't mean you have to share it, just so I can gauge how long it's taking everyone. But if you do want to share, you're more than welcome to. Does anyone who has their thumbs up currently want to share? That's all right. So you can take your time with these, but at 11:40, I will continue on with the talk, and you can keep drawing as I'm talking. I always encourage that. Oh, I'm seeing some stuff in the chat. Awesome. D&D and my cat. Lots of D&D fans. My kid, my library, and yarn drawing and writing stuff. Cool. I'm sorry you had a bad night's sleep. I've been hearing that from a lot of people, actually. Christy has kids, libraries, and all the things.
I got stuck on drawing for the bubbles, so I just wrote a couple things.
That's totally fine. Yeah, you can write.
I was like, I got stuck, so I was like, I'm just gonna write a couple of things.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to fit in, because if you draw the bubbles first, you may not realize like how much space you need for the whatever you choose to end up drawing in there.
I couldn't pick one thing for the third bubble, so I did like all the hobbies.
You can also add more bubbles. There are no hard and fast rules here. This is comics
It's hard
class.
to have 3 complete thoughts.
You can have like.
Sorry.
Oh, does someone want to share?
Pencil, but you can't, so you can't really see them on the screen.
Oh wait, if you hold it up, I can I share people's screens? Is that possible? Or I can highlight people. Will, did you want to share?
I was just gonna hold it up. I don't know if, but I don't know if you can really see it because it's in pencil, so it's kind of light.
I can see it.
You would think with all the D&D I do that I'd know their little symbol. I know it's like really like twisty dragon looking thing, but I couldn't remember like how it really looked.
Wait, hold it up again so we can.
Sorry.
A little bit further back, because it's like, yeah, there's like this sweet spot where the light hits. Okay. Oh,
it's like
cool.
kind of the little dragon thing is like the top one.
I see.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. And then what's that third one say?
The third one, I think about the future a lot. So I just did a line and I did 2024, 2025.
Nice. Perfect. Simple. Gets it across. I like the way you drew yourself too.
Oh, thanks. I don't. It looks really bad.
I mean, I think it's a great cartoon character, right? Anyone else want to share before we?
I can share.
Yeah.
For D&D, I just did like a D20 thing.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that gets it
I
across.
haven't drawn myself with glasses very much, and when I did it, I was like, oh my god, it looks like my mom. That was a weird moment. And then my cat, and then just all the hobbies. Hard to pick. It's hard to pick things.
It's hard to pick things. Yes. Great job, though. Great drawing of a cat, too. Yeah. It's hard to draw people with glasses.
Yeah.
I
I'll try showing.
sorry.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Lots of D&D. Wow. You guys should all start are you guys all on the same campaign?
No. Should be.
Wow.
It's a weird cat. Sorry.
That's a great cat. It's like the cat looks like a little grumpy, which I appreciate because my cat's also grumpy. Visible, what does it say?
Oh, visible mending and DIY, sort of a lot of creative ways to use craft that is useful.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's sustainable too.
Yes, that's the word I was trying to remember.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. I love how everyone has drawn themselves. It's really, can already get a picture of your personalities.
This is me. And I'm adding to the many, many good cats that we're thinking about. That's Marvin and Sally. And I tried to draw okay, there it is. I tried to draw like the idea of crafts. So it's glue and googly eyes going onto a paper towel roll. And that's me in my bed snoozing because I'm thinking about how I want to go to sleep a lot of the time.
Yeah, especially this time of year. I'm just like
totally
always ready to go to bed. It's always nighttime, so
yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Lots of great cat drawings too. Well done, everyone. Anyone else before we move on? We can maybe have some time at the end too. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. I love when people share. So, oops, let me just share my screen again. Okay, so everyone can see. Okay. So I'm now going to walk through how different cartoonists have approached making comics about things in the real world, nonfiction comics. And I'm calling this Comics for a Cause because I'm going to emphasize comics that specifically focus on issues in the world that people care about. And it can be something very large, like a war, or something really small, like a personal story. There's no, it's all equally important, I think, to talk about in comics, because the personal is the political. We know this because of from Greta Thunberg and many other activists who have made it their life's mission to and their life story to help get other people to care about things that they care about because they know that it's going to directly affect them, like climate change. So a really great example of this in comics is a comic by Ben Passmore. It's called Your Black Friend. And this comic was originally published on Tumblr back in 2015. Tumblr still exists, believe it or not, but I haven't been on it recently. It was a black and white comic, and it was pretty much, it was technically fiction, but it was definitely from Ben Passmore's experiences and perspectives. And it was written all in the second person, from the perspective of a Black person having to interact with a lot of white people and have like these really awkward, really uncomfortable, and increasingly oppressive encounters with people just throughout mundane life. The comic really resonated with a lot of people. And eventually he made it in color, and it was published as a physical comic book by Silver Sprocket. And then it was collected into a full book with other stories by Ben Passmore. So this comic was shared and reproduced all over the country. And it started off as just this really short black and white comic that was distributed for free on the internet. So that's the power of comics, where something that's just made with a pen and paper can reach a lot of people and resonate with a lot of people and make someone's very specific experience accessible to others. And that's how we develop empathy for other people's situations. So have any of you heard of Inktober or participated in Inktober? So it just finished, but Inktober is an annual event throughout the month of October where cartoonists and illustrators can basically draw something every day for the entire month of October. And you can do this as an illustration. Some people do this as comics, and that's what the cartoonist Sarah Glidden did. In 2019, she made a comic about climate change every day for Inktober. And it was a way for her to kind of process in real time her feelings about climate change, just by exploring how she interacts with the experience on a very personal level. Like in this comic where she's just talking to her child, her very young child. So I'll read this to you. How do you tell a baby that it's okay to play with plants that are already fallen, but not okay to destroy live ones? How can I teach him to love and respect nature without scaring him away from his own curiosity? How can I make sure he doesn't become one of the bad ones? So this is just a straight to pencil comic. I don't think that Sarah really planned it out too much. It was just almost like a diary, a way for her to process things. And then she would share these comics on social media, which is what a lot of people do for Inktober and just in general, because that's where everyone is nowadays. But you don't have to do that. If you don't want to be beholden to these giant corporations, you can just make a zine and just print it out on paper and distribute it that way. And that's what Shay Merck does often. Shay Merck made a comic every day for an entire year, using the same format of just a one sheet of paper, folding it up, and it turns into an 8-page comic book. And in one instance, she made a zine about Guantanamo Bay, just to better understand what was going on there and also spread information about it. And this little zine, similar to Ben Passmore's book, ultimately inspired her to continue on the project and create or edit an anthology where many cartoonists illustrated interviews with prisoners from Guantanamo Bay. So this was collected into an anthology. So that's one way to approach making nonfiction comics. I mean, there's the just personally engaging with an issue, and then there's conveying information. So the Center for Cartoon Studies, which is based in Vermont, and I'm affiliated with the school because I went there and I also teach there. They publish these 32-page graphic guides pretty frequently. This is the first one. It's called "This is What Democracy Looks Like." And it describes how the federal government down to local government operates. It's a very complicated system. And so it is a form of activism to just simply explain how these things work, because it gives people the power of knowledge. So here are some pages from that. And also in the graphic guide series is a comic book about how our brains deal with mental health and how how our brains respond to different difficult experiences like depression and anxiety and other disorders. But it makes it really accessible. You know, our brains become a cute comic book character. I actually made one of these graphic guides about literacy. And when I first started working on this, I was like, how is this even like I didn't know much about how reading was actually an important like social justice issue. I just thought like, oh, this is just going to be a simple educational comic. But the more research I did, the more I realized how fundamental learning how to read is, like creating inequality in our entire culture, especially here in this country. It's often on the front page of the New York Times now. Kids can't read because there's different ways to approach teaching reading, and there's a lot of backlash against just following basic science to teach reading to children. The kids can't read. Nobody wants to just say it, said Kareem Weaver, an activist with the NAACP in Oakland, California, who has framed literacy as the right to read. So the science of reading, which is what the comic book is based on, advocates to say the reason is simple: many children are not being taught to read correctly. So I was really fascinated by this, which is why I ultimately decided to make this the focus of the comic book. I knew I'd have to take really abstract scientific ideas about how the brain learns how to read and turn them into a compelling narrative. And I had to figure out the best way to do this. I figured that the best way to do this was to create a main character that people could empathize with. So I created B, a preteen who struggles with learning how to read and gets very easily flustered. And just when she's about to give up on reading this book, she meets a friendly spider who acts as her guide throughout the whole comic. And I was inspired to make this character a spider because I've always been a big fan of Charlotte from Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. It's the first chapter book I ever read, and I just love her. So Charlotte the spider understands the power of words and how they can change the world, and uses her power to act as an advocate for her community. And I thought she would be the perfect fictional character to model after my spider. So the hardest part about making this comic was trying to figure out how to show the cognitive process of reading in a way that was engaging and made sense. And I spent many hours staring at infographics like this, not sure how to translate it into a story, let alone a comic. But eventually I realized I could use the same approach I'd been using and turn everything into a cartoon character. And even the human brain became a cartoon character, and no longer a cold medical illustration. So I went full Goofy mode, and it worked out, I think. I also realized I could personify the different cognitive processes by turning them into characters as well, which ran separate departments within the headquarters of the brain. Like this guy. This brought the science to life, and it was also really fun to draw. So that's kind of my guiding principle with all comics making, but especially with comics that deal with more like technical stuff. Go with what's fun to draw, because that's what's going to be fun to read. People will read it if you know you're having fun making it. So once I figured out the comic, the next step was to make something called a book map, which is basically a rough version of the entire comic book. And I knew this comic would be 32 pages long, so I made a 32-page blank book and started filling it with a loose outline of the book. This is the cover. And then this is the spreads from the book map. It's like a bird's eye view of the comic to get a sense of the structure. So I knew that the different departments of the brain would need different 4-panel comic strips. And I had a rough idea of what would happen in each panel, but I just wrote it down. I didn't even really draw it. But it was enough information for me to jump from there to pencils. So sketching out the final story of the blobby people doing their brain stuff. From pencils, I go to inking. And it's not really inking because I didn't use ink. I drew this on an iPad. And then I would color it on Photoshop. So each step of the process took about a month to do. So comics can be really time consuming, but it always feels worth it in the end because you get to see the final art in a book, and it's really nice to see your work in print. And it also does not need to take that long. You can make a zine in a day, and every library has a photocopier, and you can just publish a zine in a day and distribute it easily. So comics are meant to be very accessible. And since this one is providing information that can help a lot of people, we wanted to get into as many hands as possible. So it is available for free on the CCS website, Center for Cartoon Studies. I can drop a link later. It's also available in print.
Yeah, I already put a link in.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. Cool. Well done. Yeah, so I wanted to just dive deep into that comic because I think it's how a lot of people approach making nonfiction comics, going through the different drafts of it. And we'll be doing a miniature version of that today. It won't take us a month, it'll take us a half hour, so don't worry. So now I'm just going to briefly go through a bunch of other different, more like subgenres of nonfiction comics, and then we'll go back to drawing. So this isn't really a comic, it's a poster, but it's done by this wonderful cartoonist named Eleanor Davis, whose work often addresses social justice issues. And a lot of cartoonists also just put their energies and efforts into making beautiful posters for marches or just causes that they care about that they can share. So having teens make posters about issues they care about is a great way for them to just creatively engage with those causes as well. The Nib just shut down, but it was and continues to offer really excellent nonfiction comics. It was pretty much the primary outlet for nonfiction comics for the last 10 years, and all of the material that it released is still available. It's just no longer publishing anything new. But they have these quarterly anthologies that often have different themes, and then their website has a great archive of nonfiction comics essays and like this one that are really informative and just often sometimes bring history to life, or just people's ideas in the form of essays. They also commissioned people to illustrate statistics. So taking things that are really dry, just plain numbers, and visualizing what they look like in a more engaging way. And then there's the good old-fashioned political cartoon. This is not published by the Nib. This is the Washington Post. It's ironically the first thing people think of, I think, when they think of comics and the relationship between comics and the wider world. But I actually think it's maybe like it's important, but I'm not sure it's like the most like active form of engaging with the world now in terms of comics. They're still obviously around, but I think that doing more sequential work can often have more depth. But of course, political cartoons offer a lot of really funny commentary. And then there's New Yorker cartoons or gag cartoons. This is one that I made for the New Yorker at the beginning of the pandemic. It wasn't supposed to be a political cartoon, but it ended up being one just because of people's reactions to it, and people's various responses to wearing masks. But a gag cartoon is just a drawing that often it has a joke in the drawing, and then there's sometimes a caption underneath it that further emphasizes the joke. So just a few more things. There are different ways to engage with the future. And there's the more cynical approach of dystopian fiction and the more hopeful approach of speculative fiction. They're both really useful, and they're both great ways to imagine the future. I find speculative fiction to be particularly inspiring these days. The cartoonist Kevin Chapp made a comic about these teens that live in a world where their brains are all melded together and they have a lot of political power. It visualizes a better future. So it's not it's less anxious than dystopian. But there are just two interesting approaches that are more in the realm of fiction than nonfiction, but still are drawing on the world we live in today and speculating on what it would be like in the future. So I think that they kind of fall into the category of nonfiction in a way too. So the last thing I'm just going to briefly talk about is The Most Costly Journey and other interview comics. So if you are a librarian in Vermont, then you've probably seen this book around because it was the VT Reads book this past year. And it collects different stories by migrant farm workers in Vermont that were illustrated by cartoonists in New England. So these are often interviews that the cartoonist conducted with these immigrants, and it's really cool to see the different stories and styles that came out of this. So Tilly Walden interviewed a farm worker. It's all in the first person from the narrative is the farm worker's perspective. And then she has these beautiful silent panels throughout the comic that take us really directly into his experience. So comics really can ground us into a story in the way that just words sometimes can't. And sometimes the artist chose to make the dialogue of the comic the narrative itself. So here we have the character actually like telling us what's going on in real time. And this is a story about a woman who's trying to get her driver's license so that she can drive her son to school. And this comic also uses this approach with the actual main character speaking and telling us what's going on in real time, but it's done in a completely different drawing style. So the change in drawing style can also really affect just what the mood or focus of the story is going to be. And I did an interview comic like this, but for a different project called A Lifetime of Firsts. And this one, we interviewed Vietnam War veterans. My partner and I worked on this comic together. And it was like an 1.5 hour long interview that we condensed into a 6-page comic. So that was a unique challenge. We recorded it and then listened back and figured out how to make it into a shorter story. Always going back and forth with her to make sure that we were on the same page about how we were conveying things. But you can also do interview comics about really like silly things as well. I like to interview the kids that I work with sometimes. So I made this comic recently called Interview with a Unicorn Expert with a little 6-year-old who knows a lot about unicorns. And it's true, unicorns are real. So really, you can do comics about anything. This is still a nonfiction comic. So I love doing comics about teaching. In fact, that's most of what my nonfiction comics are these days. You can keep it light. So there are many ways to engage with the world through comics, essays, interviews, personal stories, journalism, speculative fiction, facts and statistics, and many more that I haven't even covered. And now we're going to transition to making our own short comics. Does anyone have any questions though before we get started? That was a lot, so. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen any. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat, or if you want to turn on your mic and or camera.
Yeah. We can also wait till the end. So everyone should have a piece of paper and pencil. I would like you to take 1 minute to jot down a topic that you care about. It can be big or small. It could be one that was in one of your thought bubbles from today. when we first did our warm-up activity. Something that you think you could expand upon in a comic. And once you have that topic, take another minute to write down 5 words that you associate with that topic. And remember that the personal is the political. So if you want to do a comic about your cats, it can probably, there's probably something political about cats if you want to make it about them. It's fine. Or it doesn't even, it doesn't have to be political either. It could just be an autobiographical comic without a particular issue attached to it. Whatever gets you excited. Okay. So if you're still writing those down, that's totally fine. But for those of you who are ready for the next part, you're going to take the rest of this piece of paper that you currently have to draw what comes to mind when you think of this topic. So we're going for really simple drawings here. Emojis. We're like practically clip art if you want. Like it doesn't have to be any, we're going for symbols of these things, not anything too detailed. Because we're in the brainstorming stage right now where we're trying to visualize without thinking too hard about it, what we associate with the topic or the words that we use to describe it. Think of it as just hardcore doodling for 5 minutes. Do this until 12:10. So not exactly 5 minutes, but I just want to make sure that we have enough time. Oops. Oh, thanks for putting all these links in the chat, Jonathan.
Oh, no problem. I think I got most of, I may have missed something, but I think I got most of them in there.
No, I think you did. I think you got most of them. Okay, so if you can keep doodling, but if you're ready to move on, the next thing to do is write 2 to 4 sentences about an experience you've had with this topic. So as you can see, we're kind of alternating between drawing and writing, going back and forth. Maybe the drawings will inform the writing or vice versa. And I'm actually going to combine this next part with this one because I feel like they could easily be combined. So if you would like, try writing those sentences as if you're telling about your experience to a friend. So that might change the tone a little bit. Might make it more casual. Oh, and you can ignore the comics grid part because we'll get to that. We'll get to that next. So at 12:15, we'll go to the next part. And keep in mind that comics usually take a lot longer than this. So, don't beat yourself up if it's not like exactly how you want it to look or be, because it usually takes me like 2 hours just to pencil 1 page of comics. So actually, for some projects, it takes me a week to do a page of comics. But this is just a good way to get to think with comics, which is less about making finished art and more about using the visual side of our brains to write. So I'm just going to stop sharing for just a second to show you what I mean by a comics grid. Can everyone see this? I don't have I can't see myself on the screen, so it, but can people
Can you
see
put
this
it up just a little bit or move it back maybe a little bit? Yeah, there we go. Oh yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah. So this is a 6-panel comics grid. You can choose to do more panels or less. I like 6 panels just because it's pretty standard. It's easy to work with. And it would probably be a good amount of panels to spread 2 to 4 sentences across. So take the sentences that you wrote about your topic, and you're going to write them along the tops of the panels. And so you can split them up however you see fit. You might choose to have 1 sentence or 2 sentences in a single panel, and then another panel that's completely silent, depending on what you want the rhythm or pacing of the comic to be. But we're just doing the words right now at the top. And remember, in the interview comics that we saw, there were some that had the narrative actually in speech bubbles, where the character was talking to the reader. So if you want to take that approach, you can do that too. It might be a little bit harder to figure out placement of speech bubbles, which is why I usually encourage people to just write the words at the top for this exercise. But if you have a vision, go for it. So I recommend, oh, my computer went to sleep. I recommend the 6-panel grid. And let me just share my screen to show you a useful example of how an artist has done this before. So the cartoonist Ellen O'Grady uses this approach. This is actually a finished comic that she did with no drawings in it, because it was about a very heavy topic, the death of her mother. And she didn't think that there was no image that could do the feeling justice. So she just had these blank panels with the words at the top. And she actually has been using a similar approach because she's been making comics about the war in Gaza. So you can see that there's basically just these sentences at the top, and there's room for images, which we'll be putting images in our comics. Another thing that's useful to think about is you can split a sentence across 2 panels if you want. Like if you want to have half a sentence in one panel and then slow it down, you can make the other half in the next panel. There's different grammar rules in comics than there are in other things. If you are choosing to go with the speech bubble route, I recommend writing the words first before drawing the speech bubble, because then you won't be cramming the words into the speech bubble. All right, so no rush if you're still doing this, but this is the last part. And we'll take the rest of the class to do this part. which is to fill the comic with drawings. So we're trying not to directly illustrate what we had written above in the panels, but take a look at your brainstorm doodles, and you can even just like choose an image from that and then put it into a panel and mix and match and see what works. But we're keeping the drawings pretty simple since this is a 10-minute comic, or a half-hour comic if you include all the writing. But you can keep it as stick figures if you want, or just as symbols. But it's just something that will either further emphasize the writing or add some tension to it. Maybe it's like contradicting the writing even. Or maybe it's a straightforward illustration. You can always do a mix of those things. I love it when the images are somehow commenting or adding on to the writing in some way. Even if it's just through like a surprising facial expression. And remember, comics are about telling stories, using images and symbols. They're not as much, it's nice when you can have beautiful art, but it's really not as important as telling a story. Because we can all empathize with a stick figure if the stick figure has a compelling story, right? I think that writing comics is that sweet spot between writing and art. So the images are acting more like words than they are like standalone masterpiece paintings or whatever. That's why cartoon characters are often drawn so simply. Charlie Brown is just a circle for a head with 2 dots for an eyes and a C for a nose, but he's one of the most iconic and relatable cartoon characters ever. And yes, there are entire series with just stick figures. It's true. I'm really proud of my cat for not disrupting this class. She had a lot of opportunities. Maybe I'll bring her in. She's asleep now. I feel like it would be sacrilegious to wake her, but we'll see. She's very cute. Her name is Stevie because she looks like Stevie Nicks. So as librarians, this is a nice activity that you can use with your teens. If you have a comics program in your after school programming, or it's just something that you want to try out. And it could be fun to have the students look into nonfiction comics that you have in your collection as inspiration. yeah, there's more and more coming out every day. So it's a nice way to engage with the comics collection, and also add zines to a potential zine library if you have one in your library. So do I have resources for how comics and graphic novels are made? So there's a lot of ways that they're made. One thing that I find useful, I mean, so comics and graphic novels are made just by drawing them, and but are you asking more about like publishing them, or is it just like the actual process of writing them? Is there's
I'm gonna just ask with voice chat if that's okay.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking like yeah, drawing, any like books on drawing, but also like how layout and like typesetting and stuff works. Just I want to start a graphic novel book club for like middle school age kids, and I would love to be able to point at examples and be like, how did they do pacing here? Okay, here's like an explanation, but I'm not a comics artist, so I don't know how well I can explain that without getting some more background info.
Yeah, so I think that one of the best books on like how comics are made is called Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. And have you heard of that book?
It sounds familiar, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, it's a like pretty, it's like somewhat academic, but it is a comic book, so it does talk about all of those things, like what pacing is, what are the like the different mechanics of a comics page. And then there's a sequel to it. I forget the name of it at the moment, but it's also by Scott McCloud. It might just be like how to make a comic. But I think that's a really great place to start for especially talking about how what is making a comic work. But I think even just there's also I comics, like it's kind of a do-it-yourself comics workshop through CCS. It's called the 1 week cartooning workout. So if you want to get your kids to draw comics with like a structured curriculum, I think you can just download it from the CCS website. And it's also a great tool. And then combining that with having comics readings, that would be a great way to approach working with kids to make comics. And then as far as like graphic novels specifically, I mean, to be honest, I always encourage people to start with more shorter stories before going into the full length graphic novel, just because of how much of a time commitment it is. But I think it's pretty much the same approach as doing a shorter thing. It just takes longer. So it's like doing the thumbnail draft and then penciling it and then inking it, and showing it to other people to make sure that it makes sense. That I think, oh, then Jonathan just put the 1 week cartooning workout into the chat. So I think that's a really great place to start for working with having a structure for teaching comics.
Yeah, that's a really great resource.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Of course. Oh, also Linda Barry is all of her books on teaching comics. I think Scott McCloud is more of a formalist academic approach, and Linda Barry is more like get in touch with your inner child, and like all drawings are beautiful, and it's way more inspiring. I think Scott McCloud is more educational, Linda Barry is more inspiring, and she has great activities.
Well, thank you so much, Daryl. We are it is 12:30.
Okay.
I just want to be mindful of the time. And the your presentation is available in the slide deck is available in
Yes.
the handouts, in the virtual tote bag for everybody. And thank you so much for joining us, Daryl. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And just a quick plug for tomorrow. There's the
please.
Nonfiction Comics Festival at the Fletcher Free Library in Burlington. It's all day tomorrow, and pretty much there's a lot of cartoonists in Vermont because of the Center for Cartoon Studies, and most of us will be there selling our comics. And I'll be teaching a workshop in person. It's all ages. It's on world building, so it's like the one nonfiction workshop at the Nonfiction Comics Workshop Festival. So it'll be fun, and you should go if you're in Burlington or nearby. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody.